For decades, whenever you hear Area 51, you probably think of crashed alien ships, maybe some reverse engineered technology. But some secrets, they're buried for a good reason. Today, we're going to unearth a legend that is so dark, it honestly makes UFOs seem kind of tame. This is the story of Project Abigail. And let's be clear, this isn't just another rumor floating around on the internet. This is one of Area 51's most persistent, most controversial stories, a legend that just refuses to go away. It's a story about ambition, about tragedy, and about something monstrous that got left behind. To really get what's going on here, we have to rewind the clock. We're going back to the years right after World War II. Area 51 wasn't even called Area 51 yet. Back then, it was known as the Indian Springs Air Force Auxiliary Field. And hidden beneath all the routine flights, a project was starting to take shape in the super intense secrecy of the Nevada desert. So the idea for this project actually goes all the way back to 1943, but it was after the war that the ambition really kicked into high gear. I mean, the US military had won, but they were seriously spooked by some of the enemy's advances in human experimentation. High Command got it in their heads that to stay a superpower, they had to start pushing the boundaries of human genetics themselves. They needed an edge, and that need would lead to a dark secret that, some say, is still very much alive today. I know, it sounds like something ripped straight out of a comic book, right? And in a way it was. The initial goal was almost, well, naive. They wanted to create the perfect soldier, someone stronger, more resilient, and most importantly, completely loyal. The stakes were unbelievably high, but man, so was the potential reward. But this grand, ambitious plan was about to take a very dark, very personal turn. A top-secret military experiment was about to become one family's absolute nightmare. And this, right here, is where the legend of Abigail really begins. Okay, so right away they hit a huge snag. This was the project's biggest hurdle. You can't just use any soldier for something like this. The subject had to be someone with absolute, unquestionable loyalty. Think about it. You're creating the ultimate weapon. You absolutely cannot risk that weapon, or the science behind it, ever falling into enemy hands. The lead scientist on the project was a respected commander named Albert Western, and he proposed a solution that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. The perfect, completely trustworthy subject, he argued, would be his own daughter, a university student named Abigail Western, who he was apparently already grooming for a position at Area 51. So, with a trusted subject locked in, the experiment, now officially codenamed Project Abigail, was a go. Commander Western was totally confident that his daughter could handle the radiation and all the other radical procedures. He was so tragically wrong. Almost immediately, things went horribly wrong. Abigail's colleagues were begging Albert to stop what he was doing. Her face started to warp, becoming wider in this really unnatural way. Her teeth grew in bizarre, erratic patterns. Her skin wrinkled up and lost its color, almost like she was aging decades in just a few days. Her humanity was just visibly, horrifyingly slipping away. And the really heartbreaking part of all this is why her father kept going. It wasn't because he was some cold, ambitious monster. He loved his daughter more than anything. He genuinely believed that the process was irreversible and that stopping the experiment at that point would kill her instantly. His only hope, his desperate, tragic hope, was to see it through, just praying she could somehow recover on the other side. But the experiment didn't create a super soldier. It erased a person. Abigail, the bright university student, was just gone. And in her place was a creature that stood nearly 10 feet tall, driven by nothing but a savage, animalistic rage. Some of the most chilling descriptions actually came from the facility's kitchen staff, the people who had to prepare these enormous amounts of food for her. They said they rarely ever saw her directly, just these shadows and silhouettes in a massive, reinforced containment cell. They described her long bones as barely being covered by skin, and that every last trace of the person she once was gone. So once it was clear that Abigail's transformation was permanent, the whole project just completely fell apart. It wasn't a scientific endeavor anymore. It was a personal and professional tragedy that was about to consume its creator. You can only imagine the pressure on Albert. His colleagues declared the project a catastrophic failure and were demanding that the creature be put down. 2 years into the project, just crushed by guilt, Albert Western took his own life. He left a note with one final plea. Please, try to save my daughter, but if you can't, at the very least, don't kill her. The military?
Well, they agreed to the second part. With Albert gone, they weren't about to spend another dime on Project Abigail. They would simply stop feeding her and let nature take its course.
But Abigail, or whatever was left of her, wasn't about to just fade away quietly. The very first night they left her without food, the entire facility was about to learn the true, terrifying extent of what they had created. The stories from former employees are insane. They say that night, chaos just erupted. Security alarms started screaming across the base, and echoing through the corridors of Area 51, people heard these inhuman howls. Driven by a primal hunger, Abigail had broken out of her cell. She killed 2 guards. She just wanted to eat. And here's the terrifying irony. In a way, the super soldier experiment had worked. Security forces opened fire, but the bullets, they did nothing. She was, for all intents and purposes, invulnerable. They couldn't stop her, and they couldn't put her down. So now they've got this unstoppable creature that they can't kill. What do? Well, they made a pretty drastic decision. Since they couldn't recapture her, they would just contain her. To stop any more deaths, they sealed off the entire west wing of the facility, locking her inside with the strongest, most resistant materials they had. She was entombed, a ghost trapped in her own prison. You'd think the story would end there, right? A tragic, sealed-off conclusion. But it doesn't. It just kind of pauses, leaving us with this chilling and frankly impossible reality. More than 70 years. Let that sink in for a second. That's how long ago Project Abigail was officially shut down. That's how long she has allegedly been sealed away inside that wing of the facility. And this is the detail that keeps the whole legend from dying. Former military personnel and employees swear that those massive, reinforced doors of the West Wing are still there, still sealed shut, a permanent monument to a catastrophic failure. And the creepiest part? The story goes that on some nights, staff working late can still hear sounds coming from that sealed-off section. Desperate, inhuman howls of something that's been locked away in the dark for over half a century. Which brings us to a question that just doesn't make any sense. They left her to starve to death more than 70 years ago. So, assuming these stories are true, how in the world has she survived all this time, alone in what's basically a sealed tomb? And that leaves us with one last, kind of chilling thought to chew on. We all assume the extreme, top-level security at Area 51 is there to keep people from seeing alien tech. But what if that's just the cover story? What if the real reason for all the guns, the fences, and the secrecy isn't about protecting what's inside, but about keeping something from ever getting out?